A very good evening. This is First News and I am Violet Gonda. The World Bank has released a report which states that the economic growth forecast for Zimbabwe, which was downgraded last year, is likely to fall further. Growth in Zimbabwe is rapidly fading, and after 4.4% in 2012, the growth projections for 2013 have been revised downwards to 3%, with little prospects for a recovery in 2014. The World Bank highlighted the reasons for this decline as primarily related to low investment, tight credit conditions, and policy uncertainty after the July elections.
I think the World Bank has got this exactly right. The economy is slowing down badly. We've had a serious lack of investment as people did wait to see what would happen with the elections. And the election outturn has discouraged most investors because since the election the government has reinforced its indigenization demands, which have said to all the potential investors.
Prior to the elections, ZANU-PF wrote off municipal debts, depriving the major urban areas of revenue in excess of $500 million. This will make it increasingly difficult for the newly elected councils to pay wages and to provide basic services to residents. And since elections, the ZANU-PF government has done little to ease the fears of international investors with renewed statements around indigenization, particularly of the international banks based within Zimbabwe.
Well, the banking sector is a key issue here. The banks do not have enough money to lend for any length of time. Most of the money in the banks is on call, in call accounts, which means that the banks cannot lend it for very long. So most of the loans in the country are for periods such as 30 days. Not very much of the money is lent for longer than that. And that in turn means that most people who are borrowing that money can do nothing but buy and sell goods.
In a statement published in the Herald today, outgoing Minister of Local Government, Rural and Urban Development, Ignatius Chombo, caused further concern and confusion by announcing that all 92 local authorities countrywide immediately surrender back houses and housing stands they repossessed from aspiring homeowners who failed to settle payments. The councils were further instructed to extend payment periods and development moratoriums by up to 20 years to give hard-pressed people the chance to settle their dues. This will again impact negatively on the financial viability of councils, and the statement makes no mention of the fate of those who have occupied the houses and making payments since the previous owners were evicted.
Now, electioneering is a different exercise from running a country. They would find a lot of the promises that they were making during the electioneering phase are just not possible to be kept. So we do expect changes. Whether those changes will be far enough reaching or whether they will happen quickly enough to rescue any part of the prospects for this year or even next year, this is still very uncertain. But on the track we're on right now, we are certainly going downhill.
The MDC-T Treasurer General Roy Bennett has issued a statement contradicting media reports last month that he had resigned his position in the party. Earlier today, I spoke to Mr. Bennett and asked him to clarify his position.
I've never ever officially communicated any resignation or distancing myself from anything to do with the national executive of the MDC. Basically, I posted on my Facebook to my friends to say that I would have absolutely nothing to do with any participation of anything with the ZANU-PF government that would give them any form of legitimacy or a lifeline, and would continue with my own life and get on with trying to put bread on the table.
You know, you were quoted soon after the elections saying, and I quote, "It's time for me to step aside and wait and watch what develops." Was that statement an emotional reaction of what had happened in the elections, or you were misquoted and you didn't mean that you
No,
want
that's
to step
exactly
down?
what I said. I have stepped aside and watched the developments. In other words, I am not involved in any negotiations with ZANU-PF or haven't been consulted or had any voice considering my election as the Treasurer General and my mandate on the Standing Committee towards whatever's taking place. I was very, very firm in believing that that election was a stolen election. It was totally manipulated and rigged by ZANU-PF, and that the MDC should have absolutely no participation in any part of government to step back and start Operation Tonga Tuone. Let them get on with it and stand back and say that we would only participate in anything if there was a fresh election that was totally fair and transparent.
Is the MDCT negotiating with the ZANU-PF right now?
I have no idea, Violet. I have no communication with the MDCT.
But you are still the Treasurer General?
I am the Treasurer General, elected in absentia, in exile at Congress, unanimously together with the President. The two of us were elected unopposed.
And as you know, MDCT parliamentarians were sworn in this week, and you were against that. So what do you make of that, and also what is now the way forward for your party?
Well, again, Violet, it's totally up to the members of the MDC to digest what's happened, to put emotions aside, and constructively look forward to moving back to the values the party was founded for, and that was to bring real change for the people of Zimbabwe.
And in your opinion, what do you think the future holds now for Zimbabwe under a ZANU-PF government?
Well, there is no future whatsoever. It's a matter of time before the whole economy collapses. ZANU-PF are not trusted by anybody. There's nobody that will bring any foreign direct investment in there. They will cannibalize themselves, as is on record and has been. President Mugabe has made promises to the electorate around indigenization, and therefore I just see the economy deteriorating. I see the return of the Zimbabwe dollar and a total mess in Zimbabwe.
Presidential spokesperson and permanent secretary in the Ministry of Information threatened his counterpart in the MDCT, Luke Tamboré-Nyoka, with unspecified charges for continuing to speak on behalf of the opposition leader while he is still in the civil service. However, Mr. Tamboré-Nyoka denied that he is a civil servant and has never received a salary from the civil service.
To tell you the truth, Violet, this is the most laughable allegation I've ever had. I know the Herald writes fiction, but today they've just beaten their own record. This is ridiculous, to say the least. I've never been employed by the Public Service Commission. I joined the Prime Minister's office in 2010. They said that I could not be attested into the civil service because I was an activist, to which I just continued to work for my Prime Minister as an ordinary member of the MDC. But today I woke up to find that I am supposed to have been a civil servant. So this is laughable, to say the least.
And according to the Herald, you're supposed to have been a civil servant since August 2011. So does this mean that you can actually go and claim, back payments?
That is exactly what I said in my statement, which I called the Herald editor this morning, and I told him that I was going to write a statement so that they afford me the right of reply. They certainly owe me money if they still insisted that I am supposed to be a civil servant, because I have never been paid by the government.
What do you think it's about?
This whole thing is about trying to gag me, because in the story they make allegations that I continue to speak on behalf of Morgan Tsvangirai. I've been making a lot of noise, which civil servants are not allowed to do. Therefore, I'm seeing this thing as an attempt to gag me, to prevent the former Prime Minister's voice from being out there. So, but I can tell you, they've dismally failed before they've even started. I'm not going to be cowed or silenced.
I see that the Herald is quoting George Haramba, the president's spokesperson, who's also a permanent secretary, I believe. So what does it mean that you have a permanent secretary who's also a spokesperson for, as a spokesperson of a political leader like you are? Are you not in the same boat here?
What is shocking, Violet, is that In that story, you read that Luke is now being found at Harvest House. He's not supposed to be at Harvest House because he's a civil servant. But many a time we've seen George at ZANU-PF headquarters because he doubles up as both permanent secretary in the Ministry of Media, Information and Publicity and the spokesperson to the president. And he goes to great lengths in the story to purport to speak on my behalf. When I know that the spokesperson to Mugabe, I was shocked that I suddenly found a spokesperson.
What is
Who knows about my status, which status I myself don't know about.
What's going to happen to some civil servants, though, from your party, especially who are in the Prime Minister's office? Are they going to continue? I understand that there are about 10 people who were civil servants during the GNU. What's going to happen to them?
Civil servants, Violet, are employed by the government. They report to the Public Service Commission. And I can't speak on behalf of the Public Service Commission. I think the Public Service Commission will know what to do with its employees. So I can't speak on behalf of the PS.
Kenya's parliament voted on Thursday to quit the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court, but the Netherlands-based tribunal said it will press ahead anyway with the trials of its president and his deputy.
Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto are accused of orchestrating violence after elections in 2007. About 1,200 people were killed and 350,000 were displaced in ethnic bloodletting that plunged East Africa's biggest economy into crisis. The ICC's first trial of a sitting president is viewed as the biggest test to date for an institution that has faced mounting criticism in Kenya and across Africa, where it is accused of bias, as most of the cases to date have been against Africans. However, of the 8 cases currently before the court, 4 originate from the referrals to the court by concerned African states parties themselves. In Nairobi, ICC Kenya monitor Tom Maliti said on Wednesday a vote to end membership of the ICC was the latest effort in a long campaign to counter the court's processes to indict the Kenyan suspects.
A vote in parliament is not going to stop the cases from a legal perspective. There are political implications, but the legal implications are that the cases will continue.
Support for the ICC, which once had broad backing in Kenya, has been eroded since the peaceful vote in March this year that elected Kenyatta, the son of the country's founding leader. Parliament, dominated by the alliance that brought him to power, voted in favor of telling the government to withdraw from the ICC. But the ICC says this will have no impact on cases already in progress. Mr. Ruto's trial starts on Tuesday next week, and Mr. Kenyatta's in November, despite Kenyan efforts to have the cases dropped or moved nearer home. Both men have attended pre-trial hearings and have said they will continue to cooperate. Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda said earlier on Thursday that both cases would go ahead.
The judicial process is now in motion at the ICC. Justice must run its course. Many of these witnesses have gone to great lengths to risk their lives and the lives of their relatives to support our investigations and prosecutions.
Mr. Bensouda also said there had been repeated threats and bribes aimed at persuading relatives of witnesses in the cases to disclose their whereabouts. The vote by Kenya's parliament will start a long process of withdrawal from the court, whose Rome statutes require a signatory can only withdraw a year after submitting a request to do so. According to Maliti, if Kenya does fully withdraw, it will mean that it is not business as usual with its traditional international partners.
If Kenya does withdraw from the ICC, that in itself will be a signal that maybe Kenya will not be as engaged as it used to be with the international community. And therefore, there will be a game where, for instance, Western powers, Europe, the US, will have a very different relationship with Kenya than, for instance, neighboring countries such as Uganda, South Sudan, and members of the East African community such as Rwanda and Burundi. So this further complicates Kenya's international relations.
Both Kenyatta and Ruto have promised to cooperate with the court to clear their names. The prosecutor's office has always insisted the ICC trial of Kenyatta must proceed. The Hague-based court has no jurisdiction over crimes if national authorities are carrying out a credible investigation and trial.
U.S. President Barack Obama met with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday on the sidelines of the G20 summit in St. Petersburg. The meeting came as Obama faced growing pressure from Russian President Vladimir Putin and other world leaders to decide against launching military strikes in Syria. The Chinese Vice Finance Minister Zhu Guangyao said that military action would also have a negative impact on the global economy, especially on the oil price, causing it to rise. China, the European Union, the BRICS, emerging economies, and a letter from Pope Francis all warned of the dangers of military intervention in Syria without the approval of the UN Security Council. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon later told the leaders that any military action must have the Security Council's backing. Obama blames forces loyal to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad for the August 21 poison gas attack in the Damascus suburbs that killed up to 1,400 people. Moscow says Obama has not proven that claim and says rebel forces may have carried it out. Obama has asked the U.S. Congress to approve military action, and France has said it is ready to support U.S. intervention. And in sports news this evening, the Zimbabwe national soccer team, the Warriors, will play Mozambique in the 2014 World Cup qualifier at Rufaro Stadium on Sunday. The match comes amid poor preparations when only 4 out of the 23 players called to the national team turned up for training, and it had to be cancelled. On Wednesday and Thursday, 8 Premier Soccer League matches were played. The Warriors coach, Ian Gorowa, chose home-based players, with Willard Katsande being the only foreign-based player. Both teams are playing for pride since they had been eliminated from the World Cup to be played in Brazil next year. First TV talks to Nkolisi Ncube, a soccer analyst, about the Zimbabwe-Mozambique match.
Judging by the usual history, I would say Zimbabwe would emerge victorious. But now, from a Zimbabwean point of view, I think we shouldn't care much about the result on Sunday because we're still rebuilding, and with the new coach who seems to me to be determined to come up with a very strong side for the future, not for now. So, in as much as I wish Zimbabwe to win for the obvious morale boosting episode, I would love to see a team that plays better than what we have seen before. So we shouldn't care much about the instant results, but what's going to happen in future. Looking ahead, we've just qualified for the African Championships. For the African Nation Championships, which have been played in January, and Gorowa has already told us before that he's more concerned with building a side that is going to compete at the CHAN and qualify for the 2015 African Nations Cup. So looking at the CHAN, it's a tournament that's meant for local-based players. So I think it's a brilliant selection for the coach.
The Basketball Union of Zimbabwe says it is broke, putting at risk the national women's basketball team's participation for the AfroBasket tournament to be held in September. The AfroBasket competition is a platform for qualifying for the World Cup to be held in Turkey next year. The women's basketball team qualified in February 2013 after beating Botswana both at home and away. And that is the news this evening. I hope you enjoy the rest of our programming. This is First News with Violet Gonda.